Further debate? The gentleman from New Jersey had his hand up.
Thank you. I thank the chair, and I speak in favor of Ms. Biggert's amendment. I believe that it goes in the right direction in order to provide what we need in this area of reform. I appreciate also the comments earlier in this debate from my colleague to my left, who is not here right now, Mr. Barrett, and also Mr. Manzullo, who reaches and touches this topic from a personal perspective, and that is in the area of how do the regulations of government impact upon businesses, them and their very own families. Mr. Barrett giving the history of his family's furniture business, Mr. Manzullo giving the history of the business in the restaurant and other businesses his family has been in, and what the end result has been of after years, generations of toiling in the field basically to try to build up a business for the family to pass from one generation to the next. Unfortunately, the strong hand of the government reaching into those businesses, being that silent partner to eventually quash them down and destroy them. And so when Mr. Himes talks about the fact sheets that he occasionally sees, would that he have read them and they convinced him that those facts were to lead to his support of this amendment, that would have been good. He talks about 2 or 3 issues. He talks about jobs, as Mr. Price from Georgia just spoke to, that we've already lost 3 million jobs since this administration has come into power. And so, yes, what we do here in Washington, and yes, what we do here on this bill, yesterday with regard to derivatives and later on this legislation and future legislation will have an impact upon jobs. What Washington does has already had a detrimental impact that we have seen from the testimony already. Mr. Himes would probably know that part of the reason that we have a loss of jobs and a loss of investment is because so much money and so many investors are sitting on the sideline because of uncertainty. The uncertainty of job growth, the uncertainty of what Washington is doing, and this legislation will just simply add to that uncertainty. Mr. Himes and others also speak to the issue of credit. And they seem to be willing, as I said, to go along with the fact that this legislation may, in fact, increase the price of credit. And it's not just him saying that, it's also Mr. Bernanke, who has come before this committee, and other experts as well, saying that the ability to get credit, to get a loan, is going to go up, and the price of that loan is going to go up as well. I'm curious just exactly how that's good for the economy. I'm curious also, how do you go back to your constituents and tell them, well, I just passed a piece of legislation. It's going to be harder for you to get a credit card, harder to get a small business loan, and maybe harder for you to get a mortgage. But I thought it was the right thing to do nonetheless. I don't know how you make that argument. Well, maybe you make that argument because one of his next comments was the fact with regard to mortgages and say, well, part of the reason we're in this mess right now is because of the way the mortgages were being issued over the last several years. Yes, that's true. But we know that the Federal Reserve, at least we know on this side of the aisle, and it's in our fact sheets, that the Federal Reserve has already begun to address that issue over several months back now to try to tighten in, rein in. So we don't need a new entity, a new agency, more bureaucrats to do what has already been done. That was a problematic area. It's been addressed. Now let's see whether those tightening of the reins will actually help address that problem going forward. Interesting also, Mr. Royce raised some facts. I don't know whether anyone was hearing what Mr. Royce was saying. If the concern is that not enough is being done, well, what has been done? The records show the OTS has taken 25 enforcement actions in this year alone, 2009 alone. They responded to over 5,000 complaints per year. The OCC, which insures national banks, since 2002 has issued 1,500 notifications to national banks concerning consumer compliance matters. And they've taken 120 formal enforcement actions. The NCIU has imposed civil money penalties on 32 different federally insured credit unions and has issued 27 regulations the last decade addressing consumer protection. One of the matter is we have agencies out there. They are taking actions. Should they be taking actions more? Yes. Can we do a better job? Yes. And how do we get that done? We do that through the efforts that Ms. Biggert's substitute would do to coordinate that information, get those agencies on track to do it in a better job than they have done in the past, and that is why I support this amendment.
The gentleman from Alabama.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I want to reiterate that I believe this underlying legislation creates a new large and expensive government bureaucracy with broad and ambiguous powers that will rationally